This is Mother's Day, and we want to honor our moms. And I want to talk about how women and moms bless us every day from Proverbs chapter 31. It's the classic passage on the industrious woman, the woman who runs her own business, is a mom, does all kinds of wonderful things, and we want to look at how God gives principles for this. This is a woman, doesn't matter whether you're married or not, this is a woman in this passage who blesses her husband. Verse 10 of chapter 31, a wife of noble character who can find. Doesn't mean that they're missing, it means that God honors women, wives, mothers of noble character, that there's something about them that is the glue that holds our society together. And I believe even more so than dads in a lot of ways, moms, they're the backbone of what's working and what's happening in our society. She is worth far more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. This is a very supportive and yet independent mother and woman. She knows her own mind. She knows her own character. If you're a guy and you're married to a woman like that, or you know a woman like that, or your mother or grandmother was like that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. She doesn't need a man in her life. But if a man is in her life, she blesses and benefits that man by her very presence and character. She's also a woman who blesses her world. It goes beyond her family. Verse 13, she selects wool and flax and works with eager hands. She's never idle. She is like the merchant ships, bringing her food from afar. She gets up while it is still night. We had that conversation this morning with someone in the congregation because some of you got a Happy Mother's Day text from my wife at probably 7 or 7:30 in the morning. And I said, well, that's nothing. She's always up at 5 or 5:30. And she asked me to leave her alone and not get in her space because she's got her routine. And on some mornings I've gotten up real early like that. And if I'm not out the door, I am in her way, okay? I mean, that's her area, that's her domain, and it just kind of throws everything out of sync. So I try to avoid that and respect that. But she's up and she's doing all kinds of things, and this is the picture of that woman. She selects wool and flax. Why would you select wool and flax? I don't know a whole lot about it, but what is she doing? It's fabric for making clothing or selling clothing. She's like the merchant ships, bringing her food from afar. She gets up while it's still night. She provides food for her family and portions for her female servants. This is someone who has others that work in her household because it's a big enough household, but she takes care of her household. She takes care of those who work with her and for her. She's a woman who blesses the world around her. She's a woman who is confidently prepared for life, Proverbs tells us. Verse 21, when it snows, this is interesting because this takes place in Israel. It doesn't snow in Israel. I have a couple of pictures of snow in Jerusalem. It's very, very rare. But it's saying even for this emergency situation, something that's completely unexpected, she's prepared. I've always said I want to ski on Mount Hermon. I've never gotten to do that. Maybe in the Millennial Kingdom I'll get to do that. But that's the one place in Israel, at the north of Israel, where you will find snow, at least enough to have a small ski resort there. But the rest of Israel is kind of high desert and you don't see much of it. But she's saying that, it's saying when it snows on those rare occasions, she has no fear for her household, for all of them are clothed in scarlet. Scarlet is a picture of protection and royalty and provision. She makes coverings for her bed. She is clothed with fine linen and purple. She also takes care of herself, takes care of others, and at the same time is able to, make herself proper and attractive and everything else. And fine linen and purple, purple's a color of royalty. Her husband is respected at the city gate where he takes his seat among the elders of the land. So she doesn't detract from her husband. She actually enhances his life, and he is even more respected because of who she is in his life. She makes linen garments and sells them, so she's a businesswoman. She's independent. She's able to, have funding for herself, and supplies the merchants with sashes, so she's very productive. She is clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. Why? When do you not laugh at the days to come? When they surprise you, when they're catastrophic and they sneak up on you, when you're not prepared for the days to come. And she looks with a smile on her face at the days to come because she's prepared. She knows that even though life can throw her a curve, she is prepared by the hard work that she does, by the care that she gives to her family. She speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. So she instructs her family. I don't know if you saw it in the news, but there was a young lady whose mother was an assistant principal somewhere in the country. I don't exactly know where. But I was watching this on the news, and this young lady wanted to be on the homecoming prom queen court in the worst kind... The queen, okay. The queen. In the worst kind of way. And so there was ballots that were electronically cast, and with the help of her mother, she broke in, and she... Yeah, I said Mom's the assistant principal. Okay. Do you want to? She always knows the story better than I do. That's the diligence there. And she does know the story better than I do. But the reality is they broke into the database and they changed the votes and everything else, and now they're facing legal charges. But one commentator said, what's the problem with this mother? Along the line, she should have said, wait a minute, this isn't right, this is dishonest, this isn't what we should be doing. And so there's a mom and a woman, and there are men as well, who lack character and pass that character down. This is not the case here. She's clothed with strength and dignity. She speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. She's able to tell her children, her family, what's right and wrong, and be able to guide them along the way, which is what a parent is supposed to do. She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. She's not lazy. She really gets after things. There is nothing better in life than an incredibly hard-working woman. I mean, they will, and I'm going to tell you this, I'm going to go on record, they will work circles around men. Maybe not in the physical labor, although some can do that, but as far as getting things done, I mean, in my home, my head spins. It's like the white tornado, just kind of move through. And there are a lot of women who are very much that way. They're on top of things in the way they need to be. They're not idle, and that's the example here. Now, are there bad mothers? Yes. Are there bad grandmothers? Absolutely. Are there people who are just, like men and women both, just lazy and they don't do what God has called them to do? Yeah, absolutely. But he's lifting up an example here of this kind of woman. A woman who leaves a legacy of godliness. It's not only business affairs, it's spirituality. I wish I had as many spiritual men in any given congregation that I've ever served as I do women. You know, there's this concept in our society that Sunday school and church is for women and children. And I don't know where the men got that attitude, but I've had people come and say, where are all the men in your congregation? Well, in some cases, we're older, you know, the women have killed off the men. We do understand that. You know, it's just the reality. I'm dying slowly. It's happening. But a lot of times, men just don't take spiritual responsibility. So I'm so glad to see men who are here and who are spiritually responsible. Because women, that nurturing, that spirituality, that's just, for the most part, a natural thing that God's put in them. Verse 28, her children arise and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. Many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. This husband's attitude is, there's nobody like you. And you know what, guys? If you're married, that ought to be your attitude toward your spouse. There's nobody like you. Many women do noble things. There are a lot of great women out there, but you know what? Nobody compares to you. And the next husband ought to say, you know what? Nobody compares to you. And it's just a great thing. And then he gives this warning in verse 30. And this is a great warning for our time, for our day and age. I can't tell you how many, and I'm not putting anybody down, but how many glamour photos I see of young children who go to, particularly young girls who go to the photo studio, glamour photos on Facebook and everything else. And there's a warning about that. I'm not putting it down. There's nothing wrong with fixing yourself up and looking as good as you can. Guys, we ought to do the same thing. But verse 30, charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting. It's not going to last. But a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Why? Because that's character that lasts. I love the women I know who are Christians that are in their 80s and 90s. Do you know why? There's a character there. There's a beauty, an inner beauty about them because they've walked with the Lord. And it says, a woman who fears the Lord, not in terror, not in dread, but high respect, is to be praised. Honor her for all that her hands have done, and let her works bring her praise at the city gate. These are very, very special women and mothers, and they leave a legacy. You can look at it, and there are mothers and grandmothers in this congregation, and their children are Christians because of those mothers and grandmothers. And their grandchildren are Christians because of those mothers and grandmothers. And it's a spiritual legacy. It's a legacy of godliness. Now, I think guys should be doing this as well. I think one of the greatest things a man can do is talk about their relationship with Jesus Christ, talk about spirituality to their children, to their grandchildren. I mean, I remember, and you'd expect it because I'm a preacher, and I've been a preacher for a lot of years, but I remember my children growing up and talking about spiritual things all the time. What's the right thing to do? What's the thing that Jesus would do in this situation? And just raising them in that way. Well, moms are very, very close in this nurturing thing, you know, sometimes, and it's changed in our society because now both mom and dad are going off to work, but still, moms do the bulk of the nurturing and they do the bulk of the spiritual training and teaching. Dad should do more of that, but we struggle with that. So thank God for moms who do that. Honor her for all that her hands have done, and let her works bring her praise at the city gate. That was the public place where everybody met. And you knew whether your reputation and your character was good or not good in these small towns. Jump over to Exodus chapter 20, and verse 12 is part of the Ten Commandments. It says, honor your father and your mother so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. So there is a promise connected with health, vigor, and long life that has to do, and this is addressing the children now, with how you honor your mother and father. God has built that principle into it. Leviticus 19 verse 1 says the same thing. The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the entire assembly of Israel and say to them, be holy, because I, the Lord your God, am holy. And each of you must respect your mother and father." Well, what if I don't have a good mother? What if I have an absent mother, an absent father? How do you respect them? You respect them the way you respect God. Basically, even though they are imperfect, even though maybe they failed you, even though they've maybe made mistakes, you still give that position of motherhood or fatherhood respect. And you must observe my Sabbaths. These are all part of what God set up for the Ten Commandments, which are basic civil laws. Are we under the Ten Commandments today? Do you know which commandment was repeated in the New Testament? All of them are repeated in some form in the New Testament, not to be kept as commands, but to be kept in a relationship with Jesus Christ. Do you know which one is not repeated? Anybody? Remember the Sabbath to keep it holy, because the Sabbath was Saturday, and the Christians move it to the resurrection day, Sunday. But every other of those, like do not lie, honor your mother and father, put God first in terms of worship, all of those are restated in another form in the New Testament as things, because of our relationship with Christ, we should observe. And so that's why he's saying it even back here. We honor our parents, and it brings blessing to our lives. Ephesians chapter 6, the Apostle Paul writes this in verse 1. "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right." Why is it right? Because God commanded it, and also there's a blessing for it. And then he repeats this one of the Ten Commandments in verse 2. "Honor your father and mother." And then he says this, he adds to it, because you won't find that back in Exodus, "which is the first commandment with a promise." What's the promise? If you honor your father and mother, you will normally experience longevity in your life. It will be healthy for you. It will be a good thing, and you will live longer. And statistically, that's generally the case. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment that has a promise. It's not the first commandment of the Ten Commandments, but it's the first one that contains that promise, so that it may go well with you, and so that you may enjoy long life on the earth. Honoring our parents brings blessing to our lives. And so children, even if you disagree, if you're a teenager, I remember I was at war with my parents when I was a teenager. I mean, the only description that you could possibly come up with was I was a brat. And my mother has confirmed this over and over again. Junior high, I was kind of a smart mouth, wimpy little guy, and didn't think much of my parents, had a hard time. And that's a transition that you go through. Boy, by the time I was 30 or 35, I found out how smart and how wise my parents were. I didn't know that when I was a teenager. So you go through a stage like this. But respecting them helps life to go well. A couple of other things in Romans chapter 16, verse 12. Greet Tryphenius and Tryphosa. If you are looking for names for your children, just latch onto these, because I don't think you'll find them in the name book, but there's some good ones. So one of my favorites, if you want to use it, was Isaiah's child's name, Maher Shalahashbaz. Okay, if you can spell it, you can use it for your children. But he says, "Greet my dear friend Persis, another woman who has worked very hard in the Lord." Paul had women around him. "Greet Rufus, chosen in the Lord, and his mother, who has been a mother to me as well." Do you see the dynamic that Paul is talking about? In his ministry, wherever he traveled, this is in the book of Romans, he discovered that there were women and mothers who helped and aided his ministry. For the Lord Jesus Christ, there were always women around him who would support and encourage his ministry. And it hasn't changed in 2,000 years in the church that there are women and mothers and grandmothers who do the bulk of the ministry.